We had a guy in the company that if the firefight wasn't hot enough in the area he was in, he'd go looking for the place where it was. The combat was a little more intense, and that was the way the airborne thought. And I look back and I think, well, it sort of shaped my personality. We got into Bastogne, I think the 17th or 18th. The breakthrough started on a Sunday during the day, and we got word that the breakthrough had happened, and our sergeants came through that late that night, and the next morning we fell out and started to go to Bastogne in open trucks. And that was an experience because it was raining, snowing, sleeting, and we were well, you live around here, you see grain trucks. That's what we were hauled in for about 24 hours. So packed that if we went around a corner, everybody would lean to that side because you couldn't fall over. There were too many guys in there. We had all of our equipment and everything. And when we got to Bastogne, didn't know where we were, but we got to the corner and the signpost is still there, Bastogne this way, Foy that way. We jumped off the trucks, and the first thing we saw was 2 divisions, American divisions, in retreat, running. Some had rifles, some had no overcoats, 2 guys carrying 1 guy on a rifle sling. We saw our American Army in retreat. And our officers knew immediately they weren't prepared for that. And they were grabbing the guys, stopping them, and if they didn't have a weapon, they jammed a weapon in them and put them together and started to try and begin to offer resistance. But when I stood at that point, when we jumped off the trucks, we could see Americans running away from the enemy. It was, I hope as an American, I never have to ever see an American Army in retreat, and that's what we did. Luckily, Airborne is, as I can remember our company commander saying, "Okay guys, we're surrounded, that's what we usually are, let's go." And that, of course, that was the esprit de corps that lived with us in the Airborne, and that still exists today. That's a camaraderie and an appreciation of one another that we still have today. And even though there are only 19 left of us in E Company. This is probably one of the few companies that can talk about this or say anything about it. They came together on June 1st, 1942, and served under the same company commander the whole war. Major winners. The guys loved them. And why I was so lucky to get assigned to a company like that. And of course, Airborne had an esprit de corps that didn't exist in the normal Army. We had a guy in the company that if the firefight wasn't hot enough in the area he was in, he'd go looking for the place where it was. The combat was a little more intense, and that was the way the Airborne thought. And I guess today I think I look back and I think, well, it sort of shaped my personality to some degree. Off to our right, well, the road that were dumped at was an intersection of a road that ran outside of Bastogne into the Beaujacques woods. And it's heavy, heavy pine trees. In fact, there was no separation between the boughs of the pine trees. They came together. So when you went into the forest, it was pitch black. It was just, there was hardly any light that came through. And that's where we began to dig our holes, and we stayed there almost that entire time that we were in Bastogne. But then Patton broke through to us, and we were still, they still stayed in the holes that were there that we had dug, but then they were pulled out on about the 20th of January. The Battle of Bastogne was over with, and they broke out and went on to further combat. We were up on a hill outside the Beaujacques woods, and I had been detailed to go to a foxhole that had two guys in it before it had a direct hit by a mortar shell. And so I went there, and another guy and I picked up what was left of them, put them on a stretcher, and we're taking them back to Graves Registration, which was the gruesome part of some of the combat things that people don't talk about. And this new unit, a tank unit, right fresh from the States, they had landed in Antwerp earlier that day, which was about 60 miles away. And they came in, and the tanks were we were on just below the brow of a little hill. And these tanks came in and parked right up in back of us. Well, this kid lit a cigarette. It was black. There was no moon. There were a few stars. You couldn't see anything, and he lit a cigarette. And within about 30 seconds, wham! .188 came right in. Killed 4 guys, wounded a whole bunch of guys, including myself. I got wounded, a shell fragment hit my right femur on the side and the thigh and went right through both legs. Shattered my bones in my femurs. I spent 9 months flat on my back in bed because of that one lit cigarette. Now, that kid that lit that cigarette, if anyone could have seen him, for sure, he would have been killed by one of our guys. There was no question. The guys were standing up, and because the hill was a little bit above us, and they were standing up with their rifles looking at where the hell that kid sat down with that cigarette and lit it. I can remember the medic, because I was laying there, and the medic went around and he said, "This one's dead, this one's dead, this one's dead." And I think he said it 4 times, and the 5th time he said, "This one's alive." And I came into that, because by that time I had been hit when that shell went off. Well, they put me in a pile of snow first. That's what saved my life. But part of it tore off this whole underside of my leg here is gone. Why I am as mobile as I am today, I can't figure it out, but I am lucky. Well, they scared the hell out of me first, because I was laying on the table, and the doctors were standing there all scrubbed. Boy, I could picture that. I think I could almost see what their uniforms looked like and things like that. And I said they were all scrubbed, and the medic was standing off to the side, and he had the ether mask. And I looked at him, and there were my legs with my boots, one this way and that way, because you know, and my legs were separated from the femurs. You know, the femurs had been shattered. There was no connection. And I tell you about things that you remember in your lifetime. I looked at those doctors and I said, "Are you going to take my legs off?" And they said, "No, trooper, we don't think we are." And I said to them, "You're not bullshitting me, are you?" And they said, "No." I said, "Okay." And I took the mask, ether mask, put it on myself. And I woke up, and the nurses were, I think, the most vile, incredible thing that I ever had in my life was being in that evac ward. People screaming, nurses running back and forth. It was chaos, absolute chaos. The nurse went running by, and I said, "Nurse, nurse." She stopped. I said, "Take those blankets off of my toes." I didn't know if I had any toes. And so she picked up the blanket, moved it off my feet, and I had a plaster cast on from here all the way down, both legs. I saw those 10 toes, and I wiggled them. And I went back to sleep, I bet, for another half a day or something. I'll remember the doctor holding the chunk of femur out of my leg. Now, this was done in the ward in the hospital in England. And it was dripping blood, and it was dripping like this. And he said, "What do you want to do with this?" And he was heading for the wastebasket. I said, "No, give it to me. I'll put it with my Purple Heart." Now, the first day I had my legs on the ground, my feet on the ground, I walked across the damn floor. Yeah, I had parallel bars that could support me, but I walked across that floor, and I went home on crutches 2 weeks later and left my crutches in a bar one night. That's the last time I had to use the crutches. Well, I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, and Marquette had an excellent engineering school, and so I matriculated there, and I subsequently graduated from there with a degree in mechanical engineering, and in the ensuing years met my wife at Marquette because I wanted to go to a Catholic school, and she was living in Milwaukee in those days. And, the night before I went back to college, I spotted her across the dance floor, and 4 years later we were married. I've had an excellent, rewarding Lord took care of me, and I get around very well, even though I do have a cane, but I can't complain. So.